Hi there, and welcome to the Lois Strachan YouTube channel. I'm Lois, and today I'm answering another question from a member of my community about my journey with chronic kidney disease, the dialysis I was on, and my recent kidney transplant. But before I dive into that question, just two important notes. First, I am not a doctor, so this shouldn't be taken in any way as medical advice. If you've got any concerns about your health, please consult a qualified medical practitioner. Secondly, everyone's experience with chronic kidney disease, with dialysis, with kidney transplant, everyone's experience looks a little bit different. So if you or someone you know experiences things that are different from what I'm going to talk about, that is just normal and the way it is, because our journeys are unique to us. Okay, let's get on to today's question. It comes from Sally, and Sally asks about the diet that I was on before having the kidney transplant. And I'm going to be talking more about diet in other videos, so just check in on the others on the channel. Sally says, it seemed to her that the diet I was on was fairly restrictive, and what was I allowed, what wasn't I allowed, and more importantly, why? So this is quite a big question. I'm going to answer it as briefly as I can. So part of the dialysis process, the purpose for dialysis is to cleanse toxins from the blood. And there are certain things that dialysis can remove very easily, and there are certain things that perhaps are not quite as simple to do. And some of the things particularly that I was asked to try and manage through my diet was my intake, my consumption of potassium and phosphate or phosphorus. And these are both nutrients that are needed for the body to work, and they have impact on various parts of the body. I'm not going to go into the medical side, but I'm going to talk about the diet side. So I was asked in my diet to try and limit foods that were high in potassium or high in phosphates. I was not told that I couldn't have any, just asked to be aware of the amount that I was consuming and to try to limit my consumption of those two nutrients. So if we're looking at my diet as a vegetarian, much of the potassium that I would be taking in is through vegetables and things like that. So there are certain vegetables that are particularly high in potassium. Potatoes are extraordinarily high, I believe. Avocado is quite high, tomato, and things like that. I was given a whole list of things that were low in potassium, medium potassium, and then high, and I had to adjust my diet accordingly. And similarly with phosphate or phosphorus, often there is more phosphate in animal products. So in my case, as a vegetarian, that would be dairy, cheeses, yogurt, milk, things like that. But also it can be things like beans, legumes, things like that. It's easy to check any of those details. And as someone who's got chronic kidney disease or on dialysis, you should have that list provided to you by one of your medical team. And it's a great idea to know more. So how did this then impact the people around me? Well, it meant when I was at home, I was able to really manage the situation fairly tightly. I would be quite aware of focusing on meals that were low in potassium, low in phosphate, and trying to just manage that. Obviously, when I went out and was eating out, it's far harder to control what you're fed or what you eat, particularly when going to family and friends. And in that situation, I found it easier to say, I can't have tomato, potato, things like that, rather than saying, well, I should be able to have a little bit. It just became easier for me to manage it that way. And I tried to make it as simple as possible for my family and friends to know what was allowed. And I was also quite mindful of offering them, saying, I know I'm on a limited or restricted diet. Can I bring something that I know is safe for me to eat? So that was really how I did it. So hope that gives you a little more of an idea of what I was trying to do in terms of my diet and why I was trying to do it. And just to say that as part of the dialysis process, I would have monthly blood tests, and those would then give me a good idea of how effectively I was managing my potassium and phosphate levels. And then one final point to make about this is that as in addition to the diet controls and the dialysis, I was also managing the phosphate levels through taking phosphate binders, which would slow down the absorption of phosphate into the cells and into the bones. So those were also part of my medical process. Not everybody who's on dialysis takes binders. It depends on what they are instructed by their medical team. But I was having binders, and they also helped to keep my phosphate levels within the required limits that was shown by the blood tests, the regular blood work that was done. Okay, lots of information in this one. If you've got any questions, if you'd like any more detail, please feel free to drop me a comment in the, or a question in the comments, and I'll do my best to give you a good answer. Thanks so much for joining me. See you in the next one.